Welcome to the Deep Dive, brought to you by the DGH News and Information Network. We're here to give you a really thorough look at the weather shaping our beautiful USVI today. Just a quick heads up on our programming. You can get these weather updates daily right at the bottom of each hour, so 30 minutes past. FSN News follows that 15 minutes later at the 45-minute mark. For the bigger picture, DGH News and Information Network has news updates 4 times a day. From the USVI, that's 6 a.m., noon, 6 p.m., and midnight. BVI listeners, you'll hear news at 7 a.m., 1 p.m., 7 p.m., and 1 a.m. Wider Caribbean news comes your way at 8 a.m., 2 p.m., 8 p.m., and 2 a.m. And for U.S. and world news, tune in at 9 a.m., 3 p.m., 9 p.m., and 3 a.m. We also have historical feature stories at 10 and 4 a.m. and p.m. and Democracy Now! At 11 and 5 a.m. and p.m. The weekends feature different topics. And of course, we play originally produced Caribbean cultural and Afro-influenced music between all those reports. So today, we are diving deep into the latest weather insights for the U.S. Virgin Islands. This info comes straight from the National Weather Service, brought to you by DJ. Our mission really is to give you a clear picture of the forecast, any hazardous conditions you need to know about, and what you can expect over the next week or so. And we'll make sure to point out the differences between St. Thomas and St. Croix because they matter. So what's the weather looking like right now, this Wednesday, July 2nd, 2025? Let's unpack it. Okay, let's start with the immediate conditions. What's happening across the islands right now? The latest data shows both St. Croix and St. Thomas sitting at, well, a comfortable 82 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 28 Celsius. But, that identical number, it kind of hides some interesting differences, doesn't it?
It really does. It's fascinating how these subtle atmospheric things can make it feel quite different, even with the same temperature reading. So for St. Croix, we're looking at a few clouds. Humidity is around 74%. You've got an easterly wind, pretty steady at 14 miles per hour.
Yeah.
And the heat index, already 87 degrees Fahrenheit, so it feels warmer.
Okay, 87. And what about St. Thomas? How's it comparing over there?
Well, St. Thomas, looking at the King Airport data specifically, is showing mostly cloudy. And the humidity is a bit higher, 79%. The dew point's also higher, 75 degrees compared to St. Croix, 73. And that translates directly to a higher heat index, feels like 89 degrees Fahrenheit there. So yeah, a couple degrees warmer feel just from that extra moisture.
89, right.
And maybe more noticeably, St. Thomas is definitely breezier. Easterly winds there are 15 miles per hour, but they're gusting up to 22 miles per hour.
Ah, gusts to 22.
Yeah, that's quite a bit punchier than the steady 14 miles we're seeing in St. Croix.
Okay, so same actual temperature, 82 degrees, but St. Thomas feels, well, definitely more humid, and you'll notice those gusts. That's a really key difference right off the bat, isn't it? Shows how these local variations really impact how the day feels for you, depending on which island you're on. All right, now let's shift gears a bit to what you really need to be aware of. Safety, planning, that kind of thing. The National Weather Service in San Juan has put out a hazardous weather outlook. This covers the entire USVI, St. Thomas, St. John, St. Croix, and the nearby waters, both Atlantic and Caribbean sides. So what are the main things we should be looking out for today and tonight?
Yeah, this is important information from DGH News and Information Network for everyone. What risks are actually elevated right now? For today and tonight, there are a few areas of concern to keep in mind. First, let's talk about excessive rainfall. Now, the overall chance is low, but it's not zero. You can see some ponding of water on roads, especially in those areas that don't drain well. Maybe some localized urban flooding, small stream flooding. So if you hit standing water, definitely slow down.
Okay, good advice. What else?
Second, excessive heat. This is going to be a constant theme, really. This level of heat, it mainly affects people who are pretty sensitive to it, especially if you're going to be outdoors for a while without good cooling or enough water. And these conditions are likely pretty much everywhere across the islands. So the usual advice applies. Stay cool, stay hydrated. It really matters.
Absolutely crucial in this climate. Okay, what's next?
Third is the wind. We mentioned the breeze, right? Well, expect generally breezy conditions. Sustained winds could reach 18 to 22 knots.
Okay.
That's about 21 to 25 miles per hour. So yeah, anything loose outdoors. Patio furniture, umbrellas, trash cans could blow around. Tie them down or bring them inside.
Good practical point. And for those near the water?
Right. Two things there. For marine conditions, small boats should definitely be cautious. Most local waters will be choppy because of these winds. And then really critical for anyone going to the beach, rip currents. There's a risk of life-threatening rip currents in the surf zone. That's all islands. Be extra careful near things like piers, jetties, channels. Sometimes you get stronger isolated rips there. Okay. Remember, if you get caught, swim parallel to the shore. Don't fight it directly.
So even though there aren't any formal, watches or warnings out from the National Weather Service right now, there are definitely significant things you need to be cautious about. Heat, wind, rip currents. Good information to have from DGH News. Okay, let's look ahead a bit now, the next few days. We've heard about passing showers, the gusty winds, but you mentioned something interesting coming up, a weak tropical wave and Saharan dust. What's the forecast look like tonight through Friday, factoring those in? Let's break it down for St. Thomas and St. Croix.
Yeah, things get a bit more complex. So tonight, starting with St. Croix, expect variably cloudy skies, scattered showers likely this evening, then tapering off to just isolated showers after midnight. Lows will be warm around 83 degrees, east winds around 15 miles per hour, but gusts could hit 25 miles per hour. And here's a key point. A 50% chance of rain in St. Croix tonight. Pretty decent chance.
50%, okay, noticeable. And St. Thomas and St. John tonight.
A bit different over there. Partly cloudy skies, just isolated showers expected. Still breezy, though. Lows also around 83. East winds 15 to 20 miles per hour, but the gusts could be stronger, up to 30 miles per hour.
Gusts to 30. Wow.
But the rain chance is much lower, only 20% for St. Thomas and St. John.
Okay, so a big difference in rain chances tonight. Definitely something to keep in mind if you have evening plans, especially in St. Croix.
Exactly.
What about tomorrow, Thursday?
Thursday for St. Croix. It starts partly cloudy with maybe an isolated shower in the morning, but then it becomes mostly sunny in the afternoon. Highs are going to climb, though, around 95 degrees.
95. Phew.
Yeah. Easterly winds 10 to 15 miles per hour. Rain chance drops back to 20% for the day. Now, St. Thomas, St. John, and the nearby islands, also partly cloudy with isolated showers. But look at the high, around 90 degrees. So a full 5 degrees cooler than St. Croix.
That's significant.
It is. Winds there will be southeast 10 to 15 miles per hour, gusts up to 25 miles per hour, rain chance also 20%.
So St. Croix is definitely the hot spot tomorrow. That 5-degree difference, especially when it's already hot, you'll feel that.
You certainly will.
And looking ahead to the holiday, Independence Day, Friday.
Friday, for Independence Day, both areas can expect variably cloudy conditions. Scattered showers are likely for both. And watch out for isolated thunderstorms developing in the afternoon. Could put a damper on outdoor plans. St. Croix highs around 93 degrees. Easterly winds 15 to 20 miles per hour. Rain chances back up to 50%.
50% again for St. Croix.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
St. Thomas and St. John. Highs around 90 degrees. East winds around 15 miles per hour. Gusts to 25 miles per hour. Their rain chance is slightly lower at 40%. So again, St. Croix looking a bit hotter and a touch wetter, especially with those afternoon storms possible.
Okay. And you mentioned that weak tropical wave and the Saharan dust. How do they play into this, especially for Friday?
Right. So we do expect a weak tropical wave to arrive around Friday. Normally you'd think, okay, wave means more moisture, more rain, and it will increase moisture and trigger some of those showers, hence the higher chances.
Makes sense.
But here's the interesting part. There's also a moderate to high amount of Saharan dust moving in. We call it the Saharan air layer, or SL. Think of it like this dry, dusty, stable air mass coming off Africa.
Okay.
When that weak, moisture-laden wave runs into this dry, stable SL, the SL tends to suppress the deep convection needed for heavy rain. It sort of chokes the wave, you could say.
So the dust actually limits the rainfall from the wave.
Often, yes,
Oh.
especially with weaker waves. So you'll definitely notice the hazy skies from the dust. That'll become more apparent late Thursday and especially Friday. But that haze is also part of the reason we might not see widespread heavy downpours, even with the wave passing. It can also affect air quality a bit, so keep that in mind if you're sensitive.
That's fascinating. So the dust isn't just haze, it's actively changing the weather dynamics. Okay, good insight.
So looking beyond Friday then into the weekend and next week, what's the bigger picture? What should we generally expect? Well, connecting the dots, we have surface high pressure anchored over the central Atlantic. That's going to keep the trade winds blowing, generally fresh across the islands. The main story, really, for the next 7 days or so, is going to be persistent heat and that Saharan haze, that dense Saharan air layer we talked about. It's really going to settle in, making skies noticeably hazy, especially Saturday and Sunday, and probably lingering into early next week off and on. Temperature-wise, expect consistency. St. Croix generally running, say, 3 to 5 degrees hotter than St. Thomas each day. We're talking mid-90s for highs in St. Croix, low 90s in St. Thomas, and overnight lows. Pretty steady around 83 for both islands every night.
Okay, so heat and haze are the constants. What about rain chances within that pattern? Will we still see those island differences day to day?
Absolutely. That variability continues. Passing showers, scattered showers. They remain a possibility pretty much every day.
Yeah.
And yeah, that trend holds. St. Croix often seems to have a slightly higher chance of rain or maybe more cloud cover shifting through compared to St. Thomas. Like Take Saturday. For St. Croix, it's mostly cloudy with scattered showers likely in the morning, then partly cloudy with isolated showers afternoon, hazy in the afternoon too. High around 94. Rain chance, 50%.
50% Saturday for St. Croix again.
Right. But St. Thomas and St. John,
Yeah.
partly cloudy, just isolated showers, hazy conditions, high only around 88, and the rain chance, only 20%.
Big difference again. Hotter, cloudier, wetter potential in St. Croix Saturday.
Exactly. And Saturday night, St. Croix clears out mostly, but stays hazy, low 83. St. Thomas stays breezy, partly cloudy, isolated showers, hazy, low 83.
And Sunday, does that pattern continue?
Pretty much. Sunday, St. Croix starts sunny, then partly cloudy with isolated showers in the afternoon. Still hazy. Highs again around 94. Rain chance, less than 20% though.
Okay, lower chance Sunday.
Yeah. St. Thomas, partly cloudy, isolated showers, hazy. Highs around 90. Rain chance, 20%. So St. Croix still hotter. Starts sunnier, but similar low rain chances Sunday afternoon. Sunday night, though, things get a bit cloudier for both. Breezy, variably cloudy, scattered showers possible for both islands. Lows 83. Rain chance bumps up to 30% for everyone.
Got it. What about the start of the new work week, Monday, Tuesday?
Monday, both St. Croix and St. Thomas look breezy, partly cloudy, isolated showers. Rain chance 20% for both, but the temperature difference persists. Highs for St. Croix around 93, while St. Thomas is around 90.
Still hotter in St. Croix.
Yep. Then Monday night, St. Croix gets breezy, variably cloudy, scattered showers become more likely, 40% chance. Low 83. St. Thomas stays breezy, partly cloudy, but only isolated showers expected, 20% chance. Low 83. So double the rain chance for St. Croix Monday night.
Interesting. And Tuesday?
Tuesday. Both islands start breezy, variably cloudy with scattered showers in the morning, then clearing a bit to partly cloudy with isolated showers in the afternoon. Rain chance, 30% for both. Highs. St. Croix around 94, St. Thomas around 91. St. Croix still holding on to that higher temperature.
Consistent trend.
It is. But Tuesday night, we see a flip in the rain chances. St. Croix becomes partly cloudy with just isolated showers, low 83, 20% chance. St. Thomas stays breezy, gets variably cloudy, and scattered showers become more likely. They're 40% chance, low 83.
Ah, a reversal. St. Thomas gets the higher rain chance Tuesday night.
Exactly. Keeps things interesting.
And looking out one more day to next Wednesday.
Wednesday. St. Croix looks partly cloudy with isolated showers in the morning, then becoming mostly sunny in the afternoon. Highs around 93. Less than 20% rain chance. St. Thomas stays partly cloudy with isolated showers possible through the day. Highs around 90, also less than 20% rain chance. So Wednesday, St. Croix is hotter again and sees more sunshine by the afternoon.
Okay, so definitely a recurring theme here for you, our DGH News and Information Network listeners. Based on this National Weather Service forecast, St. Croix consistently running a bit hotter, sometimes significantly so, and the rain chances and cloud cover. They often vary between the islands, sometimes day, sometimes night. You really need to check the specific forecast for your location. And underpinning all of it is that persistent, maybe limited, but definitely present heat threat.
Absolutely. That's the key takeaway on the heat. The guidance, day after day, forecasts heat indices what it feels like above 102 degrees. That's for all the coastal and urban areas, pretty much everywhere people live and work every single afternoon through this whole period.
Over 102. Wow.
Yeah, so it's going to feel very hot, potentially dangerously hot if you don't take precautions. Staying hydrated, taking breaks in the shade or AC, it's not just comfort, it's critical for safety. The good news is no widespread significant flooding is expected during this forecast period, but that heat, that's the major weather story you need to prepare for daily.
Okay, very clear message on the heat. Now, beyond land, what about conditions out on the water and on our beaches? Lots of people want to enjoy those.
Right, and the patterns we're seeing on land translate directly to the marine environment, according to the National Weather Service info we're using.
Hey.
Expect choppy seas to continue. That's across both the local Atlantic waters and the Caribbean waters. It's driven by those persistent, moderate to fresh easterly trade winds. That weak tropical wave on Friday, it'll bring an increased chance of showers and maybe some thunderstorms over the water too, so mariners need to be aware of that possibility Friday.
Okay.
And then following that, the Saharan dust moves back in.
Mm-hmm.
So expect hazy skies over the marine areas, Saturday and Sunday particularly. Could reduce visibility out there.
Good point about visibility. And for those hitting the beaches, we talked about rip currents earlier.
Yeah.
What's the outlook there?
Yeah, that moderate risk of rip currents. It's expected to stick around for much of the forecast period. It's mainly due to those wind-driven seas pushing water towards the shore along most of the exposed beaches. The risk might lessen slightly towards the end of the week, maybe early next week, but caution is really the word, especially if you're not a strong swimmer or if you're swimming at a beach you don't know well. Always be vigilant near the water.
Okay, let's try to sort of summarize this then. For the next week or so, you can expect a pretty clear pattern. It's going to be hot, consistently feeling over 100 degrees in the afternoons. We'll have those steady trade winds, which helps a bit, but also contributes to choppy seas and rip currents. Passing showers are always possible, but the chance of getting them will vary day to day and definitely between St. Thomas and St. Croix. Pay attention to your specific island forecast. And of course, that's a heron dust means hazy skies, especially Friday through the weekend. So the key takeaway for you from this recent Information Network deep dive is really be prepared for the heat every day. Be aware of the rip current risk if you're near the water. Even without big warnings flashing, these conditions require your attention.
And maybe this raises an important question for you, the listener. How does understanding these kinds of details, like how Saharan dust can actually weaken a tropical wave, or why St. Croix is consistently hotter than St. Thomas right now, how does that help you? It empowers you, really, to better plan your day, whether it's work or recreation, and just to stay safer and more comfortable. It really highlights how dynamic our tropical climate is, doesn't it? Even these seemingly small shifts can bring noticeable changes day to day. Makes getting this kind of daily deep dive pretty essential, I think.
Well said. That wraps up today's deep dive into the weather. This has been brought to you by the DGH News and Information Network. Thanks for joining us for this daily weather digest for Wednesday, July 2, 2025. And just one more reminder about our full programming schedule. You can get these daily weather updates every 30 minutes after the hour. FSN News follows that 15 minutes later at the 45 mark. Our broader news updates run 4 times daily. Check the specific times for USVI, BVI, the wider Peruvian, and U.S. and world news on our website or schedule. Plus, we have our historical feature stories and Democracy Now! Broadcasts with different programs on the weekends. And always enjoy the originally produced Caribbean, cultural, and Afro-influenced music we play between the reports. Stay informed, everyone, and please stay safe out there.